I see a lot of folks, they're starting to wake up to the world wasn't, or it's not how it used to be. And I see a shift towards, one is the human-centric. Obviously, there's polar, right? There are folks that are going back towards the command control, right? But I see a shift starting, or maybe it started already, but towards the human-centric leadership, and then also towards looking for fulfillment and purpose and community. And that's what gives me hope, is a lot of what we talked about before, where it's like you get your job and you get promoted and you have your family and blah, blah, blah. Like those systems are coming apart and we're seeing it. And now what Gen Z is looking for, and what a lot of, I'm a millennial, and a lot of folks are starting to see is like, you know what? Yes, and I also want to live where I want to live. I want to, have the work-life balance. I want to create a life that's fulfilling and purposeful. And that matters more than 500,000 or millions more profit.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP, and welcome back to a brand new fall season of the Play Your Position podcast. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaiser, author of It's Not You, It's the Algorithm, How to Slow Your Scroll and Start Paying Attention to Your Life Again. The book just dropped, and if you've been feeling distracted, overloaded, or like your focus belongs to everyone but you, this book will help you reset your relationship with your phone, reclaim your attention, and lead from a clearer place. You'll find the link in the show notes. Now, this season here at PYP is all about leading and living with more agency in chaotic times. And today's conversation sets the tone beautifully. My guest is leadership coach and author Rob Kalwarowski, a former engineer who walked away from the check all the boxes life to build a practice centered on self-leadership. He's given a TED Talk in Japan, now lives in Costa Rica, and just released his new book, Capitalizing on Chaos, which distills practical tools like his simple reset, I'm Human, to help leaders shift from reactivity to clarity. If you've been trying to stay grounded while the world keeps spinning faster, this episode will give you calm, science-backed practices you can use today, at work, at home, and yes, in your own head. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you've missed PYP and you're glad we're back, hit follow and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more people like you find conversations that actually make life better. All right, team. New season, fresh energy, same mission. Helping you play your position like you mean it. Let's jump in. All right, Rob. So you are in the leadership space. Let's just get right to it. What does leadership mean for you at this point in time? How do you define it? What do we need to be thinking about related to this word?
That's a big word. Actually, my favorite quote about leadership comes from Warren Bennis. And he says, the hardest thing about leadership is getting to know yourself. And it's also the easiest thing about leadership. And that's really what the issue is with leadership at this time, right? Is there's never been more chaos in the world. And since the 2024 election, chaos is actually up 330%. And that's on a global scale. And so basically one man's leadership is impacting the world. And that's why where I go in the book in Capitalizing on Chaos, it's about each and every one of us, and it starts with us first. And then once we can become effective leaders of ourselves and in this self energy, that's when we reduce the chaos inside our own minds. And that ripples out, just as we're seeing in the world now, that ripples out into our families or businesses and the world. And that's why it's so important.
When did you realize for yourself that that was what it takes to lead effectively? Do you have a moment in your life when you look back and you can say that was when this lesson became anchored for me?
In January 2020, my longtime girlfriend and I went to Hawaii for a best friend's wedding. And at the time, I had the external trappings of success. It all looked great, right? I was in a long-term successful engineering career. I was making six figures, and I was in a relationship with my girlfriend who eventually became my wife. And we were walking down this beach in Kauai, and the chaos was in my own mind. I was struggling with depression, with panic attacks and suicidal ideation. And it was crushing me. And I felt every morning I woke up and I would say, I'm at war with myself. And we're walking along this beach. Of course, we're in Hawaii. People are out surfing, beautiful. And we came across this Volkswagen van. And at the back of the van, there was a wooden box full of fruit and a cardboard sign that said, take a fruit, leave $1. And in that moment, it hit me was the people who lived in that van were the ones who were out surfing, and they were free to live their lives one wave at a time.
Mm.
And there was a tiny voice in my mind that spoke up, and it was like, Rob, I would love to do that. And immediately I had that stern judgment, internal critic voice, and it said, Rob, I will never let you do that. And that was the moment where I realized that I was being controlled by fear and the chaos. And if I didn't change, I would die, basically. And that was when I chose to stop being that way. And it obviously took more work than that. I chose in that moment to stop. And then I obviously was getting help. I was getting help at the time anyways, but it really propelled me on my journey to get help. And that's led me 5 years later to here.
Yeah. And you are talking to me from this beautiful place in Costa Rica. You hail from Canada, Edmonton, right? Where it is brutally cold in the winter. And if you like the snow and you like outdoor stuff, I'm sure there's lots of festivals and fun things to do. But this moment that you just described, I think is one that I'm sensing, and maybe you are as well in your travels around the world, speaking and working with executives and individuals, that more people are beginning to either pay attention to, or there's a nudge inside of them that they're saying to themselves, this is not working, but they're not exactly sure what to do about it. What you said you were prior to this fruit experience with the van and take a fruit and leave $1, that you were getting some help because of, it sounds like you were struggling with some mental health things, which so many people do now. And there's absolutely no shame in talking about it. Our brains are the control center of our existence, right? So if we don't take care of what's up here between, our ears, everything else is going to just be not so great. For people listening who perhaps haven't quite had that moment yet, but maybe they've seen a glimmer, what did you do from that point forward in a different direction that you hadn't done prior?
Yes. majority was like I was getting coaching at the time, and that was not what you use coaching for. So, like, obviously, that led me to like mental health professionals, and that ultimately, I found some really phenomenal ones, both psychiatrist and a psychologist. And so, medication and therapy, and that led me eventually to feeling significantly better. And then that led to the pivot into coaching. I mean, I was getting coaching certifications and all these things, but it was still like the fear was going, well, you can't quit your job. And this was during COVID, so everything was remote. So it was just like, why don't you just keep your job and then coach on the side, right? Like, that's all right. But once I was able to create the inner peace and tranquility and the confidence, that allowed me to leave engineering and go into coaching full time. And that was really the pivot. And then since then, it's been this basically, a rocket ship. Obviously there's ups and downs, like, whatever, like everything. But it's been an incredible journey. Like we were just chatting before, is like I went to Japan to do a TED Talk. Obviously my book's out. Like I never imagined, or even the fact that I'm living in a tropical country, like I never imagined that was something that I would ever do, because I had been conditioned by my parents. It was like, well, you need to live in Canada or United States and like work an engineering job because it's stable and you make good money, and like you get that house and you get your wife and you have the 1.5 kids and like you'll be happy. And I had that, and yet I was definitely not happy.
Why do you suppose that model you just described continues to be this beacon of go for that? I realize that the internet, in its own way, different social media channels, depending on which ones you spend time on, have been offering alternatives, but it's few and far between. That model that you just described continues to be held up as the epitome of success. And in some ways related to leadership, right? That I imagine if you were earning 6 figures as an engineer and you had the house, I mean, you weren't a slouch. You were showing up. You were playing your position as it was defined in that context.
Yeah.
And what I think is so fascinating about your story is that you had that experience in Hawaii and you realized that playing that position was no longer going to serve you. And if you continued doing it, it would kill you. You might be physically alive, but inside, your soul, your spirit would have been extinguished. And there's so many stories of that. Tell us about some of the people that hear you speak, that work with you without violating any confidentiality. But I'm looking at patterns now to help all of us understand this massive transition that we are experiencing, because the world, as you say, and as you talk about in your book, is chaotic at the highest level that in my lifetime, and I've lived through some pretty turbulent times. I mean, I remember, Tiananmen Square, and I remember when the Berlin Wall got knocked down, right? And I remember the whole Gulf War, I grew up I was a child during the Vietnam War era, and we had gas shortages and all kinds of stuff. And, AIDS hit and crack cocaine hit. I mean, it's not like the world was this Shangri-La before today. Why is it different? And how is that tied into my question of this perpetual image of here's how you succeed?
It's the structures in place. And what you said, Mary Lou, is 100% correct. So when I talk about chaos and I give those numbers, I'm looking at the World Uncertainty Index, which is basically it tracks how many times government reports around the world use uncertainty, or the word uncertainty, or uncertain, or one like it. And even at the height of the pandemic, we are 87% higher than that right now. So we're almost double the chaos of like early 2021 where the shelves were empty. Everyone was like, oh, we got to be locked down. And, it was crazy, right? And we're almost double that right now. That's why this is so important. Now, why we're still thinking that like corporate jobs and like ascending in that way is the way that is the most effective is that's a lot of what the systems in place want. They want you to go to school, then they want you to go to college, then they want you to get a job, and then you ascend. And ultimately, I think what we're seeing is, especially in the youth, and this is like the World Happiness Index, like especially in North America, we've seen this big divide between the older generations and like Gen Z. Like the older generations rate, United States and Canada somewhere in the like 10-ish range of happiness, like ranking wise, where the youth are ranking them down by 60. And so that divide is really what we're seeing is like the Gen Zs, especially in this economy, like one is they're not getting hired in the way that they're quote unquote supposed to. They're not making enough money where they're able to pay their rent and pay for things that they need. And then they're not seeing this path upwards because we've literally seen millions of people get laid off this year. And then AI, like every company's like, well, AI is replacing jobs and blah, blah, blah. And then like, yeah, okay. The MIT report said 90% of it is ineffective right now. And that's totally cool. But, I'm sure we're not that far away from it actually doing that, right? And the biggest thing for folks, right, is none of that you can control, right? Like, yes, there are behaviors you can take to get a job. There are behaviors you can take to, do any of a number of things. But you cannot control AI unless you're like one of the 5 people in the world who have that sort of authority, right?
Right.
You can't control where the economy goes. You can't control, any of those things, but you can control what goes on between your ears.
Yeah.
And that will help you take advantage of this time. Because just like any moments of chaos that you talked about, right, in your life and the pandemic and all these other things, like there are moments of opportunity. And so like one of my clients, he runs an air sanitation company. And like they were doing air filtration for, like HEPA filters and those kind of things, right? And during the pandemic, they had this moment where they were like, you know what? Let's add UV lighting to this. So then we sanitize the air. And their business took off like a rocket.
Mm.
I mean, I wasn't part of that, so I can't claim credit to that.
But you witnessed it.
but that's something that's how you capitalize on the moment. Or like there was the vodka company that switched to hand sanitizer. That's how you capitalize on that moment. And if you can control your own mind, what you do is you end up leading more effectively. You're happier. You feel more clarity, more confidence, more courage. That is actually scientifically proven to ripple out into your teams, which builds engagement, but also builds innovation. Happy employees are 300% more innovative than their peers. That's how you capitalize on this moment.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack there. The division between the generations, the perceptions that our young people have about how the world works versus the world that perhaps their parents or even a generation ahead of them remembers is all playing into this, right? And then you've got social media amplifying rage and just perpetuating stereotypes and systems that really don't serve the way the world is today. And people like you, Rob, are coming along and offering a different perspective and reminding us all that we do have a choice, that out of chaos is often when the best inventions, the best innovations come because it forces our hand. when we're comfortable, when life's going along great, and I've lived through times like that, you're not really looking to solve any problems because you don't see any, right? So as far as where leadership is going as a concept, the most important piece of this puzzle is putting the time in, putting the miles in for developing yourself from the inside out, right? That's how we opened this. And what have you said you are feeling happier, you've moved to Costa Rica, your relationship with your wife is strong, you've got a business that is working, and you have this book. Tell us more about why you decided to write this book. And then, I don't know if you happen to have it close by, but if there was a passage you wanted to read, a short passage, we'd love to hear that.
The reason for the book was that chaos is creating poor leaders, and it's nobody's fault. In the book, I talk about there's 6 destructive leadership archetypes. I didn't invent them. There was a scientific study that surveyed and found 6 types. And we all, the spin is when, like, I use internal family systems and parts work with my clients. And basically what that means is exactly how I mentioned in Hawaii, where there was a part of me that wanted to move to the beach and just surf. And there was another part of me that was internal judgment and was like, you better not do that, right? We have many of these parts and they do different things. And when we're in uncertainty and chaos, our brain kicks into fight or flight mode. It's called the amygdala hijack. Daniel Goleman coined the term. And what happens is it shuts down the executive functioning of our brain. So literally, we cannot make good decisions. We cannot do logic. We cannot do emotions. We cannot do creativity or innovation. Our perspective shrinks. And what happens is we're left with fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. Fawn is some version of like people pleasing or sucking up to people, right?
Interesting. I haven't heard that fourth. I've heard the other 3. That's really interesting. So keep going. Yeah.
Yes. And so when we're in one of those 4 states, we become a toxic leader because we're only limited. If we're fighting, we become basically some version of a micromanager or maybe an abusive leader or, the person who yells at their people or those kind of behaviors, right? If we're fawning, then we're becoming the people pleaser leader, which often shows up as what's in the book or the research is known as the messy leader, which is like you're trying to people please your manager or the stakeholders or the board or whoever. And so one time you're talking to Mary Lou, then you're talking to Rob, then you're talking to Bill, and you're talking to Jane, and you're like flip-flopping every day, right? And then your people are like, I don't know what the vision is. I'm not sure what my priorities are. Like, what am I supposed to do, right? Those are how it plays out. And so that's why, like, one is just releasing that, and a great tool for folks out there. If you feel that chaos or that uncertainty or that stress or that frustration's building, just take a deep breath and say to yourself, I'm human. Because just with that 2-second exercise, it's going to reduce that stress, and then you can choose a good behavior or a good decision.
All right, it is halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by It's Not You, It's the Algorithm. If you've been feeling like life's on autopilot, checking boxes, chasing alerts, wondering where the day went, this book is your mirror and your map. It's not about quitting tech. It's about reclaiming yourself from it. Short chapters, sharp insights, and a lot of truth designed for busy brains who want to think again. Grab your copy through the link in the show notes and start paying attention to your life again. I love that you bring breath work into this, because for so long, that kind of category of self-care, self-development was seen in this, it was put into this box of, oh, it's those people, right? Because leaders are tough. We don't need to take a breath. What is this, right? What I find fascinating today is radical change I've noticed in professional athletes and teams. And you had told me when we first spoke a couple months ago that you don't really, you like water polo, right? And you like college football, but as far as the pros go, that you're not as big a follower, which is absolutely fine. But one of the trends, my point here is that now we're seeing these big, burly men who symbolize, ultimate masculinity, saying things like, I love you, man, and they're hugging, and coaches are saying it like that Vince Lombardi style and the Billy Martin style of old, Tommy Lasorda and those guys, I don't think would recognize professional sports today, because kindness and breath work and yoga and moving your body in a way that opens up your chakras, all this stuff used to be lumped into kind of that soft category. And now we're realizing that it is the category that makes the difference. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, let's be clear here. The Navy SEALs use boxed breathing to reduce stress, and they're the baddest dudes on the planet.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
They're using it before they go into combat. Like, if we walk into a boardroom, let's be honest, no one's shooting at us.
Right.
So
right.
It's like, that's the first thing, right? But what you're mentioning is absolutely true. And all of these teams, professionals, college, the significant teams that are making bunches of money have a mental performance coach.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, some of them are similar to me. I actually worked with one at my previous role. She was the mental performance coach for the professional women's hockey league team. And now she works at, I believe it's Dartmouth. But it's like they have people who do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like what breathwork does for us physiologically is when we feel the chaos or the stress, it allows us to reduce that and to channel the inner calm. And that's when you perform at your best, when you're in flow or you're in that state where you're at your best and you're not like analyzing all the, like when you're trying to run and catch a football, like you always know this, like the guys who they're wide open and the ball's coming to them and they're like, they always drop it. And you're like, you're in the NFL, dog. Like, come on, man. And it's like, but it happens all the time. And it's because they get in their head and they're like, I'm going to catch the ball. It's coming towards me. I got to catch it. But I got to run. But I got to catch it. But I got to run. But when, they're getting like tight coverage and, there's a defender on them and they, the throws off and they're like jumping in the air, they catch it. And it's because that's when they're in that flow. And it's actually like, in terms of like psychologically, flow is just basically the place that you are between, it's like an optimal amount of stress. So it's when you're in eustress is what they call it. But basically this is when things are too easy. And that's likely when you're wide open, the ball's coming right at you, right? It's boring. So you're not.
Yes.
And like for folks out there who work in corporate, you get this a lot. I had it a ton where it's like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, or this work is really easy, or it's repetitive, or I'm following this process where I'm going to, hit the submit button and then it's going to take another 6 months before something happens. Like that's eustress. And that's why you feel bored. That's why you feel disconnected. That's why you're disengaged. And then there's also the other side, which is overstress or like basically overwhelm, right? And that's not because you have too much work or you're triple booked with meetings, which does happen. It's because it feels like it's too much.
Yeah.
And that's when you basically shut down because your brain goes like, I can't handle all of this. That's also why for some folks, like stepping on the stage and talking in front of people is overwhelming. But then there's that optimal place in the middle, right? Which is between you talking to your best friend or your husband or wife and you talking in front of 1,000 people. And maybe that's 10 people in front of your team or whatever that is, right? But there's that optimal state where you're in flow. And that's when you perform at your best. And ultimately, to get there, the breathing, the inner work is how you get there and how you stay there.
And how you stay there. And that flow state is often held up as, again, the utopian place to be. And we can't be in flow state all the time, as much
That's
as
right.
we would like to be, even those of us who are highly aware that it's possible and have techniques like the breathing or the boxed breathing. So what you just described, Rob, is so on par with your message of chaos and uncertainty, in that on the one hand, leaders are faced with teams who are either lulled into all the friction has been removed, or they're in this hyper overstimulated state where they can't make sense of anything. And so what's your wisdom to leaders of small teams, large teams who find themselves scratching their head? They're committed to doing their work, inner work, right? So they're showing up as holistically as they can. And they're looking out at their ecosystem and seeing these pockets of disconnect. Where do we go from here? Like, what is the path forward through the lens of your leadership work?
Absolutely. So one tool is you can use the I'm Human tool with your team. So I was in San Francisco in August, and I was working with, a Fortune probably 100, but at least Fortune 500 tech company. And their team, basically, I taught them the tool. It was like, and so you can use it two ways. So I can use it on myself, of course. I can use it like when I'm stressed or I'm feeling that, I can take that deep breath, say I'm human, and I can use it for me. Now, the cool part also is Mary Lou walks into my office and I'm at my max. I can say to Mary Lou, I'm human, and that signals to you that maybe I need a minute, or maybe I'm at, my bandwidth, and you can say something like, Rob, like, do you have too much work? Do I need to balance your priorities? Like, what does that look like? What is the support you need in this moment, right? The other side of it too is you can walk into my office and see me, and maybe I'm beet red and I'm sweating and I'm like, God damn it, like this, I just got this email from the president and like, oh my God. And you go, Rob, you're human. And that's the trigger for me to go, oh yeah. And I do need that moment. Because when we get in that state, like our perspectives shrink. And so it's always normal where someone else sees it when we don't.
Yeah.
The cool part is you can make this your own.
Yeah.
And so that team in San Francisco, they were like, we're going to use the code word Cheesecake Factory.
Oh, I love it.
And so that's what they're using, right? And so it's make it your own tool because it's yours for your team.
Right.
And that just starts the ripple effect, right? And if people are like in the bored stage or the disengaged stage, that can help them go, you know what? Now I can connect to that and go, you know what? Here's where I want to go in my career. And now maybe I can open space to ask for that. Or what projects could I work on that might help me engage, right? And you as a leader, basically what Gallup recommends for leadership is that you become a coach for your team. So you want to give them feedback conversations all the time. You want to, develop their strengths. You want to care about them, which is when you're in the self energy or self leadership, that's when you access all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just showing up and caring about your people and caring about their development and that goes along with some of the hard feedback or like the I don't want to say criticism, but it's like when you have a coach and you've worked with, like I used to go to practice and my coach would be like, Rob, I want you to change your body position, or you should do this, or you should do that. And it's like, it's because he cared about me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they want. And when you
Yeah.
give that, then everything gets better. Productivity, profitability, innovation, less sick days, less turnover. They're happier, they're healthier, that ripples into their families. It's literally the greatest win of all time.
Cheesecake Factory.
That's right. And it starts with a double peanut butter, double chocolate cheesecake.
This
with caramel
immense
sauce.
piece, this big slice that they bring. It's like half the freaking thing. I love that. I love that you can make it your own. And I love that you're really mapping out the nuts and bolts, because it's one thing to be 30,000 feet and analyze the situation. It's another thing to be in the trenches and say, yeah, but, it's different here. And you and I both know it's not, but it feels different, right?
That's right.
Within each organization, within each, and then again, on top of all this, we have this constant, people have become conditioned to be on their phones all the time and going into these social media apps where they're inundated with, one of the things I talk about is when you open Instagram, you don't know if you're going to be met with a cute baby panda video rolling in the snow or some natural disaster halfway across the world where thousands of people just died. And that's what's now in your headspace. There's, yes, you made the decision to go in there. You don't know what's going to meet you at this point, right? And so all of us, leaders and employees and, people who are our colleagues across the table, we're all dealing with this now. And being able to step back and admit, I'm human, I need a minute. For a leader, that's a shift that I'm also seeing, and I think you are too, that it used to be leaders had to have all the answers. You never let them see you sweat, right? Never let them see you in any kind of vulnerable moment. That's been flipped on its head, where if you're not vulnerable, people start to say, is this guy a robot, right? And then we're dealing with the robots and the machines. You were mentioning AI coming in, and that MIT study is really interesting. Harvard Business Review just did a piece also about their coining, I don't know if they coined the term, but there's a term now called work slop that is the result of people using these AI tools without really understanding why they're doing it, except that, hey, we got to use AI. And now leaders are having to come in and clean up all this work slop because nobody knows what it means. It's polished. It's perfect grammatically. It looks really impressive, but people are reading it and saying, I don't know what this means. And the person that sent it to them can't explain it because they didn't do the thinking.
Yeah.
So again, a very simple technique of I'm human, and then the breathing can get you back to a space where you're like, okay, I can deal with this right now.
And so just what you were talking about, Mary Lou, this happens, you can use this tool all the time.
Yeah.
So I have clients and sometimes even myself, I'm like, I need, as the coach, I have to have all the answers, right? Or like, as somebody on a podcast, I have to have the answers, right? It's like when you're in those moments and you might be the subject matter expert, you might be the CEO, you might be the co-founder or founder, right? And you have that belief that you have to know everything. And you have to be the person at the front of the room who's the stoic, like amazing leader. And someone asks you a question and you're like, actually, I don't know, right? it's like you can still use that tool and take a deep breath and say, I'm human, because literally nobody expects you to know everything, right? I mean, right?
Yeah,
And
100%. How could nobody knows everything?
that's right. And like on the other side of it, right, is like I have clients who, like, another really common thing is like imposter syndrome. So the stat is like 70% of adults experience it. I think it's basically everybody. It's just like what room and what context are you in?
Right.
But that imposter syndrome, it doesn't, it can play out as like, I feel like I'm not qualified enough, or like I feel like I don't belong, or I feel like I shouldn't speak up and share my idea, or I feel like I shouldn't, whatever. If you have that moment, you can still use the tool, because everybody feels that way at some point. And that can allow you to make those decisions like, I should ask this person on a date. I should ask for this raise. I should ask for this promotion. I should apply for this job. I should call that client and ask for the deal. Like whatever goal you want to accomplish, that little part in your brain goes, don't do it, Rob. You can say you're human and you can make the decision instead of it.
Yeah. So powerful. So very powerful. What are you excited about the future, looking ahead, the leadership path that you're on, the leadership path your clients are on? What gives you hope about where we're headed?
I see a lot of folks that are in that space you mentioned. They're starting to wake up to the world wasn't, or it's not how it used to be. And I see a shift towards, one is the human centric. Obviously, there's polar, right? There are folks that are going back towards the command control, right? But I see a shift starting, or maybe it started already, but towards the human centric leadership, and then also towards, looking for fulfillment and purpose and community. And that's what gives me hope, is a lot of what we talked about before, where it's like you get your job and you get promoted and you have your family and blah, blah, blah. Like those systems are coming apart and we're seeing it. And now what Gen Z is looking for, and what a lot of, I'm a millennial, and a lot of folks are starting to see is like, you know what? Yes. And I also want to live where I want to live. I want to, have the work-life balance. I want to create a life that's fulfilling and purposeful. And that matters more than 500,000 or millions more profit.
Yeah. And it starts with taking the time to get to know what you want, that inner work, that whether you have an epiphany like you had in Hawaii or it's more gradual, there is no one right way to get there. Perhaps this conversation today will inspire some listeners to take a step back and ask themselves, what is it that I'm here to do? Am I doing that? If I'm not, what do I need to change? What's one small step? And it could be just saying, I'm human. I've made some mistakes, or I've made some choices that at one time I thought were going to lead me where I, imagined I was supposed to go, or I thought I wanted to go. And now I'm looking around saying, like you did, nah, this really isn't working for me. And I've had that epiphany.
Absolutely.
And, it's, it doesn't come all at once necessarily, although sometimes I think lightning strikes, and it could be a traumatic event where you suffered a tremendous loss or had an experience that you faced your mortality. That's a very common one. And people come out of that and say, I'm done. I'm done people pleasing. I'm done playing the role that society thinks I should, et cetera, and so forth. And it sounds like your book really dives into the 6 archetypes of the leaders that aren't working, and then gives readers some tools to practice some of the things we've discussed today. So where can people get your book, Rob?
Yeah, Capitalizing on Chaos. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, audiobook. There's like 100 different platforms it's on an audiobook. So yeah, go and get it. The one thing, if folks want to start and you're feeling any inkling of, even if it's like maybe you're not super happy with your job, or, from anything from just that thought to like, for clinical mental health, please go there. But a lot of folks really struggle with taking the first step because status quo is incredibly powerful. And I get it. I've been there. And so I have a free tool for folks, which is going to help you connect with what do you want to go? Where do you want to build? What does you want your life to look like? And then also it's going to help you get rolling because it's going to really tease that out for you. And even if you just write down your goals, if you write down your goals and you share it with somebody else, the probability that you achieve them becomes 70%, or it's 70. And that is like for 5 minutes, like just think about the ROI of that 5 minutes, right? It's like probably the best activity you could ever do. And so, yeah, if you go to robkalwarowsky.com/reason, you can get the tool right there and it'll take you 5, maybe 10 minutes to fill out. And that will just help you take the step. And it doesn't have to be working with me. I'd love to have you. My doors are open. But even if you just take that step towards whatever you want to accomplish, that's enough.
Yeah. Well, thank you for offering that free tool to Team PYP. I appreciate tools and know that something simple can really be beneficial and lead to a breakthrough. It may not be immediate, but you might look back and say to yourself, yeah, I took some time. I took that 5 minutes and the ROI is showing now. And that's a beautiful thing. So really appreciate that. And team, that the links are going to be available on Rob's show notes page. You're going to be listening to this somewhere. Just look underneath in the copy, and there that link will be. You can just poke it on your phone. Most of us are listening on our phones, and it'll take you right to it. And, what's 5 minutes worth to you? Do you want to spend 5 minutes scrolling Instagram or 5 minutes looking at what you really want in the next chapter of your life? And a tool like this can really be that kind of breakthrough. So, Rob, before we say goodbye, what's one thing that we didn't talk about today that you feel that's on your heart about anything at all? How would you like to end this?
For the people out there who are suffering in silence, and I see this, I had calls this week where it was executives, entrepreneurs, and they're at their limit and they're feeling the weight of the world on their shoulders. You're not alone. Take that deep breath, say you're human, and then reach out to somebody. Like if you want to, you can email me, rob@robkalwarowsky.com, or you can send me a note on LinkedIn. I will support you, but it doesn't even have to be me. You can reach out to your wife, your husband, your best friend, somebody. But please, there's so much weight that so many of us put on ourselves. And in this moment of chaos, it's breaking people. And don't wait till you're broken. Start now and just get that support you need.
Well, Rob, thank you so much for your time today. This has been really enlightening and affirming. And I'm so grateful that we are now connected. And I've brought your wisdom to Team PYP, who's right there with us on this journey.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary Lou. And I would love to dig into you and your book. So we'll have to talk about that sometime.
We'll make that happen.
Absolutely.
The Play Your Position podcast is produced by the fantastic Daniel Ramirez, aka Dr. Podcasts. Interested in your own algorithm reset? Visit MaryLouKaiser.com for the book, the toolkit, and ways to work with me. Until next time, remember, it's always a great day to get out there to play your position and live like you mean it.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.